The photo was dated 3 years ago. My wife's lips were pressed against another man's mouth, and my dying mother had kept it hidden in a box labeled, "For Kyle, when I'm gone." I sat in the dim hospice room, the only light coming from a small lamp in the corner, and the green glow of machines that measured what remained of Patricia Parker's life. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors had stopped saying weeks 2 days ago. Now they just said, soon, and looked at the floor when I asked for specifics. Mom slept fitfully, her breathing shallow and uneven. 67 years old and shrinking into the hospital bed like she wanted to disappear. I'd been coming here every day for the past 3 weeks, sitting with her, holding her hand, telling her stories about work she pretended to understand and couldn't really hear anymore. Sometimes I'd read to her from the newspaper. Sometimes I'd just sit in silence, watching her chest rise and fall, counting the seconds between breaths. The hospice was nice, as far as places to die go. Private room with a window that overlooked a small garden. Soft lighting, muted colors, the constant hush of voices trained to speak in soothing tones. It cost a fortune, but I didn't care. My mother had spent 30 years as a legal secretary, pinching pennies, building a modest retirement. She deserved better than a shared room and fluorescent lights. Her belongings had arrived that morning. Boxes from her house that the hospice social worker suggested I go through. Linda was her name, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and comfortable shoes. It helps, she'd said with that practiced compassion they must teach in social work school, to have something to do with your hands, and it means you won't have to face it all at once later. I'd thanked her and carried the boxes to the corner of the room, stacking them beside the window where the afternoon light could reach them. 4 boxes total, each one labeled in my mother's neat handwriting. Kitchen memories, photos, family, Kyle's childhood, personal, important. So I sorted. Old photographs of people I half remembered. My grandparents, my father before the car accident took him when I was 12, my mother young and laughing in bell-bottoms and platform shoes. Birthday cards she'd saved from decades past, including every single card I'd ever given her, arranged chronologically in a rubber-banded stack. A collection of porcelain birds I'd bought her over the years, each one wrapped carefully in newspaper from 2019, back when she was still healthy enough to dust them herself. Report cards from elementary school. My high school diploma. My college acceptance letter. My mother was meticulous, organized to the point of obsession. Former legal secretary for 30 years, first at a small family law practice and then at the district attorney's office. She used to joke that she could organize the chaos out of anything. That's why your father married me, Kyle. His sock drawer was a disaster. She kept records of everything. Receipts from appliances purchased 20 years ago. Warranties for products she no longer owned. A filing system for her filing system. The wooden keepsake box was at the bottom of the 3rd carton, hidden beneath a layer of tissue paper like someone had deliberately buried it. Dark walnut, about the size of a shoebox, with brass hinges that had turned green with age. I'd never seen it before, which was strange. I thought I knew every corner of my mother's life. I knew where she kept her spare keys, taped inside the flour canister, her emergency cash between the pages of her grandmother's Bible, her important documents, a fireproof safe in the basement. But this box was new, secret, hidden even from me. My hands hesitated on the lid. Something in my gut, that animal instinct we spend our adult lives learning to ignore, told me to put it back, to not open it, to let whatever secrets my mother had kept remain buried. I opened it anyway. The first thing I saw was Emma, my wife. 35 years old, marketing director at a tech company downtown. The woman I'd loved for 8 years and married for 5. She was laughing in the photo, her head thrown back the way she did when something genuinely amused her, standing on what looked like a hotel balcony somewhere warm. Palm trees in the background, blue sky, the golden light of late afternoon. She wasn't alone. A man stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, his face pressed into her neck like he was breathing her in. I didn't recognize him. Handsome, in that silver fox way that men seem to acquire in their 40s. Dark hair going silver at the temples, strong jaw, expensive watch catching the light. I could tell even from the photograph that it cost more than my first car. My first thought, absurdly, was that it must be some kind of mistake. A relative I'd never met. An old friend from before our marriage. Someone harmless. I set that photo aside and found another. Emma and the stranger at dinner, candlelight flickering between them. Her hand on his across the white tablecloth, their fingers interlaced in that casual way of couples who touch each other without thinking. Another. Walking on a beach at sunset, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. Another. Drinks at a bar, leaning into each other like people who've known each other's bodies for years, sharing an appetizer and a laugh. The final photo hit me like a physical blow. A kiss? Not casual. Not friendly. Not the kind of kiss you give an old friend or a distant cousin. This was the kind of kiss that spoke of hotel rooms and stolen weekends and lies that had been rehearsed until they felt like truth. Her hands in his hair. His hands on her back, pulling her close. Their bodies pressed together like they couldn't get enough of each other. On the back, someone had written in my mother's careful handwriting, June 14th. June 14th, 3 years ago. The date triggered something in my memory. I pulled out my phone, opened the calendar, scrolled back through years of appointments and meetings and dinners until I found it. Our 5th wedding anniversary trip. The one we'd been planning for months. The one Emma had canceled at the last minute. I remembered now. She'd come home looking stressed, apologetic, carrying a bottle of my favorite wine like it could make up for what she was about to say. Kyle, I'm so sorry, but there's a work conference in Miami that weekend. Regional Marketing Summit. It's mandatory for all department heads. I'd been disappointed. We'd booked a cabin in the mountains, reservations at that restaurant she loved. But I understood. I'd always understood. Work came first sometimes. I knew that better than anyone. We'll celebrate when you get back, I told her. Anniversary dinner just delayed a week. She'd kissed my cheek at the airport and walked away rolling her carry-on, and I'd gone home to an empty house and spent the weekend designing blueprints for a client I barely remember now. 3 days of solitude while my wife was in wherever this hotel was. Palm trees. Ocean view. With this man. There was more in the box. A thick manila envelope stuffed with documents. I set it aside for now because there was one more item. A letter, unfinished, in my mother's handwriting. My dearest Kyle. I have to tell you about Emma. I've watched you love her for 8 years and I've kept silent for too long. What I'm about to tell you will break your heart, but you deserve the truth. I should have told you sooner, but I was afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid you wouldn't believe me. Afraid she would. The letter ended mid-sentence. No signature, no date. But the handwriting was steady, clear. Not the shaky scrawl of a woman dying of cancer. This was written months ago, maybe years. Why didn't she finish it? Why didn't she tell me? Why did she keep all of this hidden in a box instead of just picking up the phone and saying the words that would have set me free? I looked up at my mother, still sleeping, her chest rising and falling with the mechanical rhythm of the oxygen machine. All those years she'd been polite to Emma. Never warm. Always excusing herself early from dinners. The canceled holiday visits. The phone calls that got shorter and shorter. I'd blamed it on generational differences. My mother was traditional, Emma was modern. They just didn't click. I was a fool. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. How's your mom? When are you coming home? Miss you. I stared at that heart emoji for a long time. Then I deleted the message without responding. Put my phone in my pocket. closed the box. I looked at my mother again. Something new was settling into my chest, cold and quiet, replacing the grief that had been living there for weeks. It wasn't rage exactly. Rage is hot, impulsive. This was different. This was something I could use. I'd built my career on patience. 12 years growing Parker and Whitmore Associates from a two-person operation to one of the most respected architecture firms in the state. I designed buildings that would stand for centuries. I didn't make decisions quickly. I made them right. Emma didn't know what she'd married. She thought I was the nice guy, the steady provider, the man who would never suspect because he trusted too easily. She was about to learn otherwise. I went home that night and acted normal. Emma was on the couch when I walked in, scrolling through her phone with one hand and holding a glass of wine with the other. The TV was on but muted. Some reality show about people renovating houses. "Hey, babe." She looked up and gave me that smile. The one I used to think meant she was happy to see me. Now I wondered what it really meant. How was she today? Sleeping mostly. I hung my jacket in the closet, took my time with it, controlled my breathing, kept my voice steady. She had a rough night, so they upped her pain meds. Poor thing. Emma set down her phone and stretched. She was wearing yoga pants and one of my old college sweatshirts. She looked comfortable, safe, like a woman who had nothing to hide. "Are you hungry? I can heat up some pasta." I ate at the hospital. A lie. The first of many I would tell her. "You should take a break tomorrow," she said, patting the cushion next to her. "You've been there every day. It's wearing you out." I sat down, not next to her, but in the armchair across the room. She didn't seem to notice the distance. "I want to be there. She's my mother." Emma nodded sympathetically. "I know, babe. I just worry about you." "Do you?" I thought. "Do you worry about me when you're in hotel rooms with that man? Do you think about me at all?" "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired." She came over anyway, stood behind my chair and started massaging my shoulders. Her hands were warm, familiar. I'd loved those hands once. Now they felt like a stranger's. "You're so tense." Her voice was soft, concerned. "Let me take care of you." I let her. I sat there and let my wife touch me and thought about that photograph. Her lips on another man's mouth. Her body wrapped in another man's arms. 3 years ago. Our anniversary weekend. How many times since then? "Thanks," I said when she finished. "I'm going to shower and crash. Early morning tomorrow." "Of course." She kissed the top of my head. "Love you." I didn't say it back. She didn't notice. 2 days later, my mother had a lucid moment. I was reading to her. Some article from an architecture magazine, nothing she would have cared about normally, but the sound of my voice seemed to calm her, when her eyes suddenly focused. Really focused, not the glassy half-awareness that had become her default. "Kyle." I set down the magazine, took her hand. "I'm here, Mom." "Did you—" She struggled to form the words. Her lips were cracked, her voice barely a whisper. "The box. Did you find—" My heart started pounding, but I kept my expression calm. "I found it. I found everything." Something like relief washed over her face. Her hand tightened on mine with surprising strength. "Everything's in the box." "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have been braver." "Why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Afraid." She said things, made threats. I couldn't. She was fading, the effort of speaking draining what little energy she had. I documented it. All of it. I was going to, when I had my affairs in order. But then, "I know, Mom. I understand. Do you forgive me?" I leaned forward and kissed her forehead. "There's nothing to forgive. You protected me the only way you could. I love you." She smiled then. The first real smile I'd seen in weeks. My boy. My good boy. She slipped back into unconsciousness, still holding my hand. That was our last real conversation. 3 days later, Patricia Parker died in her sleep. I was beside her, holding that same hand, when the machines stopped their rhythms and the room went silent. The funeral was on a Saturday. Gray sky, threatening rain. The kind of day that seemed designed for grief. Emma was perfect. Black dress, tasteful makeup, holding my arm and dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She greeted mourners with the exact right amount of sadness. She told stories about Patricia that made people laugh and then tear up. She was, I had to admit, giving the performance of her life. She was like a mother to me, Emma told my Aunt Barbara, and I watched my aunt nod sympathetically while I thought about my mother's journal entry from 6 months ago, which I'd found in the box. Emma came to the house today. Told me if I ever said anything to Kyle, I would never see my grandchildren. Then she smiled and asked if I wanted to see pictures from their trip to Napa. Grandchildren. Emma had told my mother she was pregnant 2 years ago. I remembered the phone call, remembered how excited Mom had sounded, how she'd already been planning the nursery she wanted to set up in her guest room. 3 weeks later, Emma had called her crying, saying she'd miscarried. Mom never mentioned it to me. I didn't want to upset you if Emma hadn't told you yet. But she'd written in her journal that she'd suspected even then that it was a lie, a manipulation, a tool to make her threat credible. I stood at my mother's grave and watched dirt fall on her casket and thought about all the ways Emma had hurt her. All the ways I hadn't seen. Will Hartley found me after the reception, when most of the guests had left and Emma was inside, helping clean up, which meant drinking wine and checking her phone where she thought I couldn't see. You holding up okay? Will had been my best friend since freshman year of college. Attorney now, divorce, and family law. He'd flown in from Chicago when he heard about Mom. Yeah, no, I don't know. That's about right. He handed me a glass of whiskey. I'd tell you it gets easier, but you know that's not true. I took a drink. It burned going down. I need to ask you something, professionally. Will's eyebrows went up. He'd known me long enough to hear what I wasn't saying. I'm listening. Not here, not now, but soon. I'll call you this week. He studied my face for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Whatever you need, Kyle. I'm there. The following week, I went to my mother's house alone. I told Emma I needed to start sorting through things for the estate. She offered to come, but not very hard. You should have some time alone with her stuff, she said, which was generous and understanding, and also, I now understood, exactly what she wanted. Me out of the house so she could do whatever it was she did when I wasn't watching. Mom's home office was exactly as she'd left it. Desk perfectly organized, filing cabinet locked. I found the key in the place she always kept important keys, taped to the underside of her desk drawer in a small envelope labeled with a random string of numbers that meant nothing to anyone but her. Inside the filing cabinet, I found everything. The PI report was over 200 pages. Surveillance logs, photographs, hotel receipts, timeline of the affair stretching back 3.5 years. My mother had hired a private investigator 2.5 years ago, when her suspicions first became certainties. The investigator was thorough, professional. He documented everything without ever being detected. Emma met with him every Tuesday and Thursday, sometimes more. Hotels, mostly. Nice ones, the kind where the staff was paid to be discreet. Occasionally, his apartment. Once my stomach turned when I read this, our vacation home in Vermont. The one I'd inherited from my grandfather. The one where I'd proposed to her. There were photos of them entering buildings together, leaving together, holding hands on city streets where they thought no one would see, kissing in parking garages. And there was my mother's journal. March 15th. Tried to tell Kyle today. Had him on the phone, was about to say the words, and Emma walked in. She knew. I could see it in her eyes. She knew what I was about to do. I hung up and made an excuse. Later, she called me. Her voice was so sweet, so concerned. Patricia, I just want you to know, if you're thinking about saying anything to Kyle, well, I'd hate for it to affect your relationship with your future grandchild. Future grandchild. She's not even pregnant yet, but she's already using it as a weapon. April 2nd. Emma called again. Asked about the baby shower I was planning. There is no baby. I'm almost certain now. But what can I say? If I'm wrong, I'll look like a monster. If I'm right, she'll destroy me anyway. April 29th. She miscarried. Or so she says. I didn't believe her. But Kyle believed her. He comforted her. He held her while she cried. I watched my son comfort the woman who has been lying to him for years, and I said nothing. What kind of mother am I? August 14th. Diagnosis today. Pancreatic. Stage 4. They give me 8-12 months, maybe less. I don't have time to be afraid anymore. I'm going to tell him. I'm going to... The entry cut off there. I imagined my mother sitting at her desk, getting that phone call, her whole world shifting. By the time she'd processed it, she'd probably reasoned that she needed to get her affairs in order first. Make sure the evidence was complete. Make sure I'd have everything I needed. She'd run out of time. But she'd left me everything I needed to finish what she'd started. I called the PI the next day. His name was Frank DeLuca, and he answered on the second ring like he'd been expecting to hear from me. Mr. Parker, my condolences about your mother. She was a remarkable woman. She told you about me? Only that someday I might get this call. She wanted me to be prepared. Said when she was gone, you'd find the file, and you'd want to know if anything had changed. Has it? A pause. The surveillance ended when she stopped paying. That was about 8 months ago. If you want current information, we'd have to start fresh. How soon can you start? How soon can you get me a retainer? I wired him the money that afternoon. By the end of the week, I had confirmation. Emma's affair was still ongoing. Same man, same routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Meridian Hotel downtown. Occasionally weekends when she told me she had work trips. Frank sent me new photos. Emma laughing at a restaurant. Emma walking arm in arm with him through a park. Emma in a dress I didn't recognize, one she must have bought specifically for these outings because I'd never seen her wear it. And then the photo that changed everything. It was taken at an industry gala, some charity thing, black tie. I recognized the venue. I'd been to events there myself. In the photo, Emma was standing with her affair partner, both of them holding champagne flutes and looking at something off camera. He was in a tuxedo. She was in the blue gown she'd worn to my firm's anniversary dinner last spring. And standing right next to them, half turned toward the camera with a smile frozen on his face, was me. I was in the photograph. I'd been at that event. I'd talked to people, shaken hands, made small talk. And somewhere in that crowd, my wife and her lover had been standing together, maybe laughing at me, maybe not even thinking about me at all. I zoomed in on the man's face, tried to place it. I knew I'd seen him before, not just at this event, but... And then it clicked. Tyler Brooks, real estate developer. His company, Brooks Development, had hired my firm for 3 projects over the past 4 years. I'd sat across from this man in conference rooms. I'd shaken his hand at groundbreaking ceremonies. I'd designed buildings that bore his name while he was sleeping with my wife. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was professional. It was every handshake, every smile, every great work Kyle he'd ever given me. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. I need a divorce attorney, a good one. Will's voice on the other end of the line was careful. Define good. One who wins. I'm not licensed in your state, Kyle. You know that. But I can recommend... I don't want a recommendation. I want you. I want you to advise me on strategy and then point me toward whoever can execute it. A long pause. What's going on? Can you come out this weekend? I'll explain everything then. He was on my doorstep Saturday morning. Emma had conveniently scheduled a spa day with girlfriends, which I now knew meant she'd be at Tyler's apartment until evening. We had the house to ourselves. I showed Will the box, the photos, the PI report, my mother's journal. I talked for 2 hours straight, laying out everything I'd learned, everything I'd been thinking. He listened without interrupting, his lawyer face firmly in place. When I finished, he let out a long breath. This is comprehensive. Your mother was thorough. She was a legal secretary for 30 years. She knew how to build a case. She built a good one. He flipped through the PI report again. The timeline is solid. The documentation is professional. And the journal. He shook his head. The fake pregnancy, the threats, that's going to be devastating in court. What do I need to do? Will set down the papers and looked at me. First, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Not as your friend, as an attorney. What do you want here? Revenge or justice? I'd been thinking about this for weeks. What's the difference? Revenge is emotional. It makes you feel good in the moment, but it can backfire. It can make you look bad. It can cost you in court. Justice is strategic. It's about getting the outcome you deserve, financially, legally, emotionally, while protecting yourself. And if I want her to feel it? Will almost smiled. That's where the strategy comes in. You can have justice and still make sure she understands exactly what she's lost. But it takes patience. Can you be patient, Kyle? I thought about the past 3 weeks, going home to Emma every night, eating dinner with her, sleeping beside her, watching her smile and kiss my cheek and check her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. Waiting. I've been patient for weeks already, I said. I can keep going as long as necessary. Will nodded. Then here's what we're going to do. The next month was an exercise in controlled demolition. I lived a double life. At work, I was the same Kyle Parker I'd always been. Focused, professional, maybe a little quieter since my mother's death, but nothing that raised eyebrows. At home, I was the grieving husband, grateful for his wife's support, present but preoccupied. Emma interpreted my distance as grief. She gave me space. She was understanding. She was, in her own twisted way, probably relieved. Meanwhile, I was quietly disassembling our marriage piece by piece. Will had given me a checklist. I followed it to the letter. I opened new accounts in my name only, at a different bank. I documented all our assets, all our debts, all the money that had flowed in and out of our marriage. I made copies of tax returns, investment statements, property deeds. Our house was a premarital asset. I'd bought it before we met. But there were other considerations. Retirement accounts, the vacation property. I accessed our shared cloud storage, the family account we'd set up years ago for photos and documents, and found something I hadn't expected. Emma had been writing to Tyler. Not texts, which she probably knew could be traced, but drafts. Letters she'd written and never sent, saved in a folder labeled Work Projects. Tyler. I know we talked about timing, but I don't think I can wait much longer. Kyle is suffocating me. He doesn't even see me anymore. All he cares about is work and his mother. I need a partner who actually wants me, not just a warm body in the bed. I've been looking at apartments. There's a place in the Arts District that would be perfect for us. 2 bedrooms, so when you finally leave Rachel, the kids could visit on weekends. The letter went on. There were others, dozens of them, spanning more than 2 years. In them, I found the full scope of Emma's plan. She wasn't just having an affair. She was planning an exit. She'd been telling Tyler that our marriage was dead, that I was emotionally distant, that she was the victim of my workaholism and neglect. She'd painted herself as a woman trapped, waiting for rescue. She didn't know that Tyler was never going to rescue her. That realization came from Frank's expanded investigation. Tyler Brooks, it turned out, was married. Wife named Rachel. 3 kids, ages 8, 11, and 14. By all appearances, a happy family. But Frank found patterns. Tyler's business trips, Rachel's increasingly separate social life, and whispers, nothing concrete, just rumors, that this wasn't Tyler's first affair. I looked at the photos Frank had taken of Tyler with Emma, and then at the photos he'd found online of Tyler with Rachel and their children. Christmas cards, school plays, soccer games. Tyler was living 2 lives, just like Emma. Just like me now. But unlike Emma and Tyler, I was going to be the one who decided when the masks came off. I met Rachel Brooks on a Thursday afternoon. It was a calculated risk. I'd thought about it for days, talked it through with Will, considered all the ways it could go wrong. But the potential upside was too significant to ignore. If I was going to burn down the fantasy Emma and Tyler had built, I needed help. I chose a coffee shop in a town 40 minutes away. Neutral territory. I'd sent Rachel a message through her work email. She was a freelance graphic designer, her contact information publicly available, explaining only that I had information about her husband that she deserved to know. She almost didn't come. She told me later that she'd thought it was spam or some kind of scam. But something in my message, maybe the specific detail I'd included, the name of the hotel Tyler favored, had made her curious enough to show up. She was prettier than I'd expected. Auburn hair, tired eyes, the kind of posture that suggested she was used to carrying more weight than she should have to. She sat across from me in the booth with her arms crossed, her coffee untouched. "You have 5 minutes," she said, "and then I'm calling the police." Fair enough. I slid the folder across the table. "Your husband has been having an affair with my wife for 3.5 years. Rachel didn't move, didn't blink. "If this is some kind of..." "Open the folder." She did. I watched her face as she looked at the photos, the surveillance logs, the hotel receipts. Her expression didn't change much. She had good control, but I saw her hands start to tremble. "That's Tyler's handwriting," she said quietly, looking at a note he'd written to Emma. "That's the watch I bought him for our anniversary." "I'm sorry." She looked up at me. Are you? Are you sorry? Or are you just here because you want something?" Honest question. She deserved an honest answer. "Both," I said. "I'm sorry because no one should have to see what you're looking at. And yes, I want something. I want them to lose everything they thought they had. And I want them to lose it together." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You know, I suspected, for years. But he was always so careful. And I wanted to believe the lies." She closed the folder. "This isn't his first affair." I figured as much. There was a woman from his office about 5 years ago. And before that, someone he met at a conference. He always ended things before I could prove anything. I stayed for the kids. She shook her head. "Isn't that pathetic? I stayed for the kids and he just kept..." "What do you want to do about it?" She looked at me for a long time. I could see her thinking, calculating, making decisions that would reshape her entire life. "I want out," she finally said. "I've wanted out for years. I just didn't have... this." She tapped the folder. "Proof. Something concrete. Something my lawyer could use. My friend Will is one of the best divorce attorneys in the country. He can recommend someone in your state. Someone who specializes in high-asset cases. Someone who will make sure you and your kids are protected." Rachel nodded slowly. Then she looked at me with something that might have been respect. "What exactly are you planning, Mr. Parker?" I told her. We coordinated over the next 2 weeks. Phone calls, encrypted messages, carefully scheduled meetings in parking lots and coffee shops far from our regular lives. Rachel retained the attorney Will recommended, a woman named Catherine Vance, who had a reputation for reducing unfaithful husbands to rubble. I finalized my own divorce papers with a lawyer in my state who came highly recommended for exactly these situations. We aligned our timelines, chose our dates, prepared our ammunition. Meanwhile, I took care of the professional side. Tyler's company had a major project in the works, a mixed-use development downtown that my firm was designing. $2.3 million, 18 months of work. It was supposed to be a flagship project for both our companies. The kind of building that gets written up in architecture magazines and wins regional awards. I'd been proud of that project. The design was some of my best work, a seamless blend of commercial and residential space, green building principles, public art integration. I'd put months of creative energy into it, working late nights and weekends to get every detail right. And the whole time, the man who was paying for it had been meeting my wife at the Meridian Hotel. I called a meeting with my partner, James Whitmore. He'd started the firm with me 12 years ago, back when we were both young and hungry and stupid enough to believe we could compete with the established players. We'd built something real together, something I trusted. "I need to tell you something," I said, closing the door to his office. "And it's going to affect the firm." James set down his coffee. He was 62 now, silver-haired and distinguished, the kind of architect that clients loved because he looked exactly like their mental image of what an architect should look like. But I'd known him long enough to see past the image. I could read the concern in his eyes. "That sounds ominous. Tyler Brooks has been sleeping with Emma for 3.5 years. James's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, anger, then a cold, hard focus that mirrored what I'd been feeling for weeks. That piece of... He stopped himself, took a breath, adjusted his tie like it would help him think. "Are you absolutely certain? Because if you're wrong about this, I have documentation, photos, surveillance logs, the works. My mother actually hired a PI before she died. She'd been trying to protect me." "Your mother?" James shook his head slowly. "God, Kyle. This whole time, while we were working on his building, while I was working on his building, while I was making him money, while I was shaking his hand at groundbreaking ceremonies and telling him what a pleasure it was to work with him." James was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "What do you need from me?" "We finished the current contract. We're legally obligated, and I don't want to give him any grounds for a lawsuit. The last thing I need is for him to claim we tanked his project deliberately." "Agreed. We do the work, we do it right, we honor our commitments." "And then?" "Then we're done with Brooks' development. Forever. We don't bid on any more of his projects. We don't return his calls. We don't exist for him." "Done?" James didn't hesitate. "What else?" "I've heard Tyler's been courting 3 other firms for future projects: Harris Associates, Cornerstone Design, and Mitchell Partners." I was thinking, professional courtesy. Nothing that could be construed as slander, just a friendly heads up. Architect to architect. James smiled grimly. "You know, I had lunch with Dave Mitchell last week. He mentioned Tyler's name, said he was considering a partnership. I didn't say anything then because it wasn't my place, but I could always follow up, express some concerns, mention that we've decided to step away from the relationship and suggest he might want to do his due diligence. That would be appreciated." By the end of the week, Tyler Brooks's reputation in the industry was starting to develop cracks. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that could be traced back to me or my firm. Just the slow accumulation of hesitations, postponed meetings, deals that fell through for reasons no one could quite explain. Projects that had seemed certain suddenly required further review. Partners who had been enthusiastic suddenly needed more time to consider. Tyler wouldn't know what hit him until it was too late. D-Day was a Tuesday. I woke up early before the alarm, lying in the dark and listening to Emma breathe beside me. She was sleeping peacefully, her face relaxed, one hand tucked under her cheek like a child. I wondered what she was dreaming about. I wondered if Tyler was in those dreams. I wondered if she'd wake up with any sense that today was the day her world would end. I showered, dressed in my best suit, the charcoal gray one I wore for important client meetings and award ceremonies. Shaved carefully, noting the new lines around my eyes, the gray at my temples that had appeared over the past 2 months. I looked older, harder, like a man who had been through something and come out the other side changed. Emma was still sleeping when I went downstairs. I made coffee, read the news on my phone, checked my email, responded to a message from Will confirming that all the paperwork was in order. Watched the clock. At 9:45 a.m., I sent a text to Rachel, "Ready when you are." Her response came at 9:52. "Walking in now. God help me. Good luck to both of us." I imagined her getting out of her car, straightening her jacket, walking into Tyler's office building with divorce papers in her purse and 16 years of marriage crumbling behind her. She was braver than I'd given her credit for, stronger than her husband had ever realized. At 10 a.m. exactly, Rachel Brooks walked into her husband's office with divorce papers in her hand. I know what happened because she told me later, in detail, over drinks at a bar neither of us had ever been to. Tyler was in a meeting when she arrived, some kind of deal negotiation with a development partner. His assistant, a young woman named Brittany, tried to stop her. "Mrs. Brooks, your husband is with clients right now. Perhaps you could schedule. He'll want to see me." Rachel smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Trust me." She walked past Brittany's desk, past the frosted glass partition, and into the conference room. Tyler looked up from his laptop, surprised, then annoyed, then, when he saw the papers in her hand, absolutely terrified. "Rachel, whatever this is, can we please discuss it at home?" "We're done discussing things at home, Tyler." She set the papers on the table, right in front of his clients. Two men in expensive suits who were suddenly looking anywhere but at the family drama unfolding before them. "These are divorce papers. I suggest you read them carefully before you try to hide any assets. My attorney has already subpoenaed your financial records, so I wouldn't bother lying about the offshore accounts." Tyler's face went pale. "Rachel, please, can we talk about this privately?" "No." Rachel turned and walked out, her heels clicking on the marble floor like gunshots. Behind her, she could hear Tyler scrambling to explain to his clients why his wife had just detonated a bomb in his conference room. At 10:15 a.m., I sent my text to Emma. "We need to talk. I know about Tyler." 4 words, no explanation, no context, no hint of the 8 weeks of planning that had led to this moment. Just enough to shatter everything. I imagined her reading it. The cold shock, the racing heartbeat, the frantic attempt to figure out what I knew, how I knew it, what she could possibly say. I imagined her grabbing her keys, making excuses to whoever she was with, speeding home. I was sitting at the kitchen table when she burst through the door. The box was in front of me, my mother's box. The photos arranged neatly. The PI report open to the page with the hotel receipts. The journal bookmarked to the entry about the fake pregnancy. Emma stopped in the doorway. Her face was white. Her hands were shaking. She was still wearing her work clothes, pencil skirt, silk blouse, the pearl earrings I'd bought her for our 6th anniversary. But her hair was disheveled, and there were mascara tracks on her cheeks. "Kyle, I can explain." "No." She flinched like I'd slapped her. I'd never heard my own voice sound like that before. Cold. Final. The voice of a man who had spent 7 weeks building a fortress of evidence and had no intention of letting anyone pass the walls. "Kyle, please, just let me—" "Sit down." She hesitated, looking at the chair across from me like it might be a trap. It was. But she sat anyway, her eyes darting between my face and the contents of the table. 3.5 years, Emma. I kept my voice level, controlled. Will had coached me on this. Stay calm. Don't raise your voice. Don't give her ammunition. Don't let her see you lose control. Every Tuesday and Thursday, the Meridian Hotel, his apartment on weekends when you told me you had work trips, our vacation house in Vermont, the one where I proposed to you, 3 times in the last 18 months. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. My mother knew. She tried to tell me, and you threatened her. I tapped the journal. April 3rd, 2 years ago. You went to her house and told her that if she ever said anything to me, you'd make sure she never saw her grandchildren. That's not, I never meant it like, your mother misunderstood. You faked a pregnancy to make the threat credible. You called her crying 3 weeks later, claiming you'd miscarried. My mother sat in her living room, alone, grieving a grandchild that never existed, while you were probably at the Meridian with him. Emma's face crumpled. Kyle, you have to understand. I don't have to understand anything. I picked up the PI report, thick as a phone book, and set it down in front of her with a thud. 217 pages. Surveillance logs, photographs, hotel receipts, copies of texts. My mother hired a private investigator 2.5 years ago, Emma. She documented everything. And when she died, she made sure I'd find it. Your mother hated me. Emma's voice was rising now, desperation creeping in. She never gave me a chance. She was always looking for reasons. She didn't hate you. She was afraid of you. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange calm settle over me. There's a difference. She knew what you were, and she was terrified that telling me would cost her everything. So she built a case instead. That's what legal secretaries do. They document, they prepare, they make sure that when the truth finally comes out, it's undeniable. Emma's tears were flowing freely now. Kyle, I loved you. I still love you. Tyler was a mistake, but Tyler wasn't a mistake. Tyler was a choice. A choice you made every Tuesday and Thursday for 3.5 years. A choice you made on our anniversary weekend when you told me you had a conference. A choice you made every time you came home smelling like wine and that cologne he wears and crawled into bed next to me. What was I supposed to do? Her voice broke, became a wail. You were never around. You were always working. I was lonely, Kyle. I needed someone who actually saw me. Then you should have talked to me. You should have suggested counseling. You should have been honest and asked for a divorce like a grown adult. Instead, you spent 3 years lying to my face while planning a future with a man who was never going to leave his wife. That stopped her cold. What? I almost smiled. This was the part I'd been waiting for. Tyler Brooks is married, Emma. Wife named Rachel. 3 kids, ages 8, 11, and 14. He's been stringing you along for 3 years, promising he'll leave her when the time is right. It's the same thing he told his last affair partner. And the one before that. Emma's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, denial, realization, horror. That's not... He said he was going to... He lied. That's what he does. That's what both of you do. I slid the divorce papers across the table. You have 48 hours to collect your personal belongings. The house is in my name. Premarital asset. I've already changed the locks. When you come back to pack, Will's paralegal will be here to supervise. Emma went to Tyler expecting rescue. I know this because Frank was still running surveillance. He sent me photos of her arriving at Tyler's office building at 3:47 p.m., mascara streaked, clearly having been crying. She walked in like she owned the place. Shoulders back, chin up, the kind of confidence that only comes from believing you have somewhere safe to land. She came out 45 minutes later looking like someone had pulled the ground out from under her. Frank got audio of the conversation. Not admissible in court, obtained without consent. But I didn't need it for court. I just needed to know. Tyler had barely let her through the door. His secretary had tried to stop her. Mr. Brooks is dealing with some personal matters today. Perhaps you could schedule... But Emma pushed past her like she wasn't even there. Tyler, thank God I need... Not now, Emma. His voice was different on the recording. Clipped, annoyed. Gone was the warm, seductive tone I imagined he used on Tuesday afternoons. This was the voice of a man whose world was falling apart and who had no room left for the complications he'd created. But Kyle found out. He knows everything. He has photos and this PI report and... I know. Rachel filed this morning. Rachel, your wife? Yes, Emma, my wife, who I've been married to for 16 years, who just showed up at my office with divorce papers and a detailed accounting of every hotel room I've ever booked. My kids aren't returning my calls. My business partners are canceling meetings. And now you're here, wanting what exactly? For me to fix it? You said we'd be together. You said once the timing was right. The timing was never going to be right. Tyler's voice cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Do you understand that? I was never going to leave Rachel, the kids, the house, my reputation. I was never going to throw all that away. You were a distraction, Emma. A pleasant one, but a distraction. Silence on the recording. I imagined Emma standing there, finally understanding. 3.5 years of hotel rooms. 3.5 years of whispered promises. 3.5 years of believing she was building something when she was just being used. I gave up my marriage for you. Her voice was barely above a whisper. No. You gave up your marriage because you wanted to. Don't put that on me. And right now, I need you to leave. I've got lawyers calling, my wife is threatening to take everything, and I can't deal with this right now. You need to figure out your own situation. Tyler, please. Goodbye, Emma. Don't contact me again. The sound of a door closing, then footsteps, then silence. Emma spent the next 2 weeks trying to fight the divorce. Her attorney was competent but overmatched. Will had prepared me for every possible angle. The claim that she'd supported my career, countered by her similar income and the documentation of her affair. The push for alimony, denied due to the affair and our comparable earnings. The attempt to claim part of the house, shut down by clear premarital asset documentation. In the end, her attorney told her the truth. Fight this and lose everything, or accept the terms and walk away with something. She signed the papers on a Thursday morning. She walked out with her retirement account, her car, and her personal belongings. Nothing else. 6 months later, I was standing in my mother's living room. I'd decided to renovate the place rather than sell it. It needed work. Decades of deferred maintenance, outdated fixtures, the kind of quiet neglect that happens when someone is too sick to care for their home. The wallpaper was peeling in the hallway. The kitchen cabinets were the same avocado green that had been fashionable in 1978. The bathroom tiles were cracked, the carpet was worn, and the furnace made a sound like a dying animal every time it kicked on. But the bones were good. Victorian-era construction, solid wood framing, the kind of craftsmanship they don't do anymore. The location was good too. A tree-lined street in a neighborhood that had been gentrifying for years. And I liked the idea of building something new while preserving what mattered. It felt appropriate. Like a metaphor I was choosing to live inside. I was sketching ideas for the kitchen, an island here, new windows there, maybe knocking out the wall to the dining room to create an open floor plan. When I found the last envelope, it was tucked behind a loose board in the closet of her bedroom. A hiding spot I never would have found if I hadn't been measuring for new shelving. The board had warped slightly over the years, creating a gap just big enough for my tape measure to slip through and clatter against something that definitely wasn't another board. I pried it open and found a plain white envelope with my name written on it in her handwriting. Shaky, this time. This was written near the end. Kyle, if you're reading this, you found everything. I'm so sorry I couldn't say the words out loud. She took that from me. My courage, my voice, but she couldn't take the truth. The box was always going to find you, sweetheart. I made sure of it. I arranged with Linda, the social worker at the hospice, such a sweet woman, to make certain you received it with my things. I needed you to know, even if I was too weak to tell you myself. I hope someday you can forgive me for waiting so long. I hope you know I never stopped fighting for you, even when I was too afraid to fight openly. You deserved better than her. You deserve someone who sees the good in you, not just what you can provide. I love you. Forever. Mom. I sat on her bed, still made with the same floral comforter she'd had for 20 years, and cried for the first time since her funeral. Not from grief. I'd done that grieving. This was something else. Relief, maybe. Gratitude. The knowledge that my mother had loved me enough to build a safety net even when she couldn't be there to catch me. She'd protected me until the very end. And beyond. I met Rachel for coffee a few weeks later. We'd stayed in touch. Not often, just occasional check-ins. The kind of friendship that develops between people who've survived the same storm. She looked better. Less tired. The permanent crease between her eyebrows had softened. She was wearing colors now instead of the muted grays and blacks she'd favored during the divorce. The kids are adjusting, she said, stirring her latte. Therapy is helping. Jake, that's my oldest. He was angry at first, blamed me for breaking up the family. But then Tyler missed his soccer championship because he was tied up at work, and Jake started to understand. Tyler's still in the picture? Every other weekend, when he remembers. She shrugged. The settlement was fair. Catherine was worth every penny of her fee. And Tyler's business troubles have, let's say they've kept him humble. He's not fighting me on anything anymore. Good. I meant it. What about you? She asked. How are you doing? Better. And I meant that too. The anger had faded. The cold focus had done its job and then receded, like a tide going out. What was left was something quieter. Not happiness exactly, but the foundation for it. I'm dating a little. Nothing serious. Just remembering what it's like to be honest with someone. Rachel smiled. That's more than I'm ready for. But I'm glad you're moving forward. My phone buzzed. A text from Will. Got a referral for you. Woman just found out her husband's been cheating. She needs a good divorce attorney. I gave her your firm's number and said you might be willing to share your PI's contact info. Hope that's okay. I looked at the message for a moment. Then I typed back, give her my number. Happy to help. The cycle continues, I thought. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe the best way to honor what my mother had done for me was to make sure other people had the same chance, to pay forward the protection she'd given me. I put my phone away and finished my coffee. I visited my mother's grave that evening. The headstone was simple. She would have wanted it that way. Just her name, her dates, and a short inscription she'd chosen herself years ago when she was first making arrangements. Beloved mother, faithful friend, finally at rest. I placed fresh flowers in the holder, white roses, her favorite, and stood there for a while, not really praying, not really thinking, just being present. The cemetery was quiet, peaceful, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the grass. Thank you, Mom, I finally said, for everything. Even the things you couldn't say out loud, especially those. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a car started. I walked back toward the parking lot, toward my car, toward whatever came next. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and gold. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. A number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mr. Parker, this is Sandra Holloway. I got your number from Will Hartley. He said you might be able to help me. My husband has been... I just found out he's been... Her voice broke. I could hear her trying to hold it together, trying to be strong. Take your time, I said. I'm listening. And I was. Because that's what you do. You listen. You document. You plan. And when the time is right, you act. Justice. One case at a time.